e-commerce makes up a very small fraction of their overall sales. What are some of the ways and solutions you put that into place?
The vast majority of a brand's distribution is through retail. Brands tasted that value of having a direct relationship, but the reality is e-commerce maybe makes up 10% of total commerce. When you sell through different channels like Tail and Amazon, you lose that direct relationship with your customer.
You almost have multiple avatars of your brand in the public eye, and each avatar can wear a different hat or have a different face to it. How Brij physically solves that problem? What solutions do you offer brands?
You could only profitably acquire customers in D2C to a certain extent. And frankly, these are brands that will go from 90% of their revenue is from D2C that like overnight with a couple of big retail partnerships can shift to 50-50.
You're helping them, guide them on their omni-channel journey, whichever step or phase they're in, but with the intent of capturing and knowing who that offline customer is and bringing them online.
If you love what you are doing and the people, the problem that you're solving and kind of the people that you're interacting with, you're excited about kind of putting in that grit and that hard work because you get knocked down so many times in a day.
Your challenges of yesterday are going to be smaller than your challenges of today, and that's a sign of growth. And so I would always ask my guests, what is it cause you're passionate about? The following episode of the e-commerce hotline was recorded April 5th, 2024, and features Kait Stevens, the CEO of Brij. Brij is an omni-channel solution aimed at retail and e-commerce brands. And on this episode, Kait shared many insights about how her company was using AI in their SaaS product offering and in their offerings, which, as you know, in the first quarter of 2024, ChatGPT was sweeping the world by storm, and AI was beginning to be used by more and more tech companies to market their products, and how AI was at the forefront of what became important for businesses to pay attention to. Now, as we release this episode a little over 2 years later in April 2026, AI has completely changed the world in all facets. So I want you to listen to this episode through a lens of looking back at the past and how now the future has been changed, and what she talked about can now mean more to you. Also, on this episode, Kait shared some very personal stories about women in the workforce and how her own journey is intersecting with the choices between a career and motherhood. You cannot miss this episode. I'm Meir Bianchi, host of the e-commerce hotline, and this is episode 11, The Lost Tapes Part 1, featuring Kait Stevens of Brij. Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of the e-commerce hotline. I'm your host, Meir Bianchi, founder of BeMeyer. BeMeyer is an e-commerce and web development agency based in Brooklyn, New York. And I'm lucky today to be joined by Kait Stevens from Brij. She is the founder. And Kait has made some huge inroads in the Shopify and e-commerce landscape with her company Brij, which is focused on omni-channel solutions for brands. And Kait herself is a lord of content and does some of the most funniest, interesting content in the space herself. So I feel very gracious to have her here. Kait, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and about what you do?
Sure. Well, hey, Mayor, thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here. So I'm the founder and CEO of Brij. We are a platform that is AI enabled to bridge the offline and the online for omni-channel brands. So we have a couple of different kind of tools and solutions that I'll, dive into later on in the episode, to explain how we do that. But we work really across categories with omni-channel brands, and by that I mean brands that sell across online, in store, in retail and marketplaces. So brands like Feastables, Black Diamond, Conair, Bonafide, and are looking for, ways to connect with their customers across all of those channels. So that's really what we focus on at Brij. As you mentioned, I'm, really passionate about omni-channel. And so I also run a podcast called The Omnichannel Marketer, where I interview brands to talk through, how they approach meeting their customer wherever they shop, and how they think about bridging that offline and online for their customers across all of the channels that they sell through. So that's kind of, what I'm focused on today. My background, I started my career in investing, and I was actually investing in omnichannel future of retail which is where I discovered the problem that we're focused on solving at Brij, which is very much, connected to this kind of omni-channel ecosystem. But when a brand sells through retail, they lose all connection with their customer. So this is kind of a decades old, it's literally a black box for them. So this is a decades old problem that that brands, in many ways, kind of just have thought of as the status quo. But what really changed there was during the pandemic, brands were forced, that never had a direct consumer presence, were forced to set up an e-commerce site. And what happened there was they realized the power of having that direct relationship with their customer, and being able to, build that rapport. And so now you have these, direct relationships, you have that, the Shopify e-commerce direct ecosystem, and other ways that brands are now looking to kind of retain their customers. So through email, through SMS, when they own their customer. So brands tasted that value of having a direct relationship. But the reality is, e-commerce maybe makes up 10% of, total commerce. The vast majority of a brand's distribution is through retail. And so what we actually saw in the pandemic was a convergence of brands. So your retail first brands were setting up an e-commerce site. But your digitally native brands were moving into channels like Amazon and marketplaces and retail faster than ever. So really this like emergence of what we now call omni-channel brands, and that's brands that are selling multi-channel, which is now the consumer behavior that they're meeting their customers where they want to shop. The challenge with being omni-channel is that, when you sell through different channels like retail and Amazon, or other marketplaces, you lose that direct relationship with your customer. And so that's the pain point that Brij is focused on solving, or, bridging that relationship between a brand and customer. So yeah, my background was in investing. I discovered this problem. I was actually, investing in the space, discovered the problem, went to Harvard Business School, met my co-founder, and we graduated in 2020 in the pandemic. So we were iterating around this problem already, but then it was really accelerated by the pandemic and kind of this, convergence of omnichannel.
Got it. So a couple of things there, because first of all, thank you for sharing. And there's a lot to unpack there. And I would say, so just coming out of Harvard Business School at that stage in your career, your mind was open to challenges like, hey, we're armed with this new information. We want to go somewhere. And you immediately noticed this problem in the market. And I wanted to speak on a couple points there, is that one, it sounds like you also work with new and traditional brands, like Conair, for example, has been around for a very long time. But then Feastables, obviously newer brand. So just connecting the dots, that it's cool that you helping solve, these challenges which are common across both legacy and new brands. And the other thing I wanted to ask about there was also, like, when you see, not so much ask, but comment on that. When you see a product in stores, traditionally, like, you might, you expect to see Conair at every, in every beauty store or everywhere. But like, for example, a direct-to-consumer first brand getting into a store can be like a Trojan horse almost, because that helps them expand past the channels where they're normally discovered, versus the other way around. Like you said, e-commerce can make up a very small fraction of direct-to-consumer e-commerce makes up a very small fraction of their overall sales.
Yep.
And then I think the third thing to comment on is obviously social media is not brand new, but given that we have these like third, fourth, fifth, sixth points of contact that are now in the world, whether it's through a multi-channel marketplace like Amazon, or insert, name of new entrant here, Walmart, etc., or Instagram or TikTok, it's like you almost have multiple storefronts, multiple avatars of your brand in the public eye, and each avatar can wear a different hat or have a different face to it. And so coming back to what you do, tell me a little more about how Brij physically solves that problem. Like, what solutions do you offer brands. So say I'm Conair and I come to you and I'm like, hey, we want to connect more with our customers wherever they are. What are some of the ways and solutions you put that into place?
Yeah. So I think that you are correctly articulated the different profiles that that our customers take. So your more traditional kind of legacy brand, and then your very much non-traditional kind of Mr. Beast backed Feastables, which is your influencer brand. And we're finding pretty interesting product market fit in a couple of different buckets of brands. But as you mentioned, we have both profiles. So speaking to a Conair, which is your more legacy brand, what we're seeing that they're interested in is, one, these legacy brands are looking to become more relevant and bring more content to their customers. And so the Conair use case, initially is actually helping to educate in store their customers. So, when they're launching a new hair dryer in store, providing kind of curated digital content, through a QR code in store to help drive that customer education and then purchase. So it's actually, in partnership with a couple of different retailers that they're launching new product at, to provide this, curated content experience that they're enabling through Brij. And, that is very different than linking to your website. So your website
Very much
is
so.
meant to, think about Conair, they probably have thousands of SKUs. Your website is meant to, be that central brand site that educates the customer on all of the products that Conair offers. But what we're helping them to do is like curate content that is for a specific product. So, if you walk down the aisle at a Belk, which is a department store, and you see this QR code that encourages you to scan to learn more about their Infinity Pro hair dryer, that you have this curated content about the Infinity Pro hair dryer that educates the customer and helps them understand why they'd want to purchase. So that's kind of a use case that we're seeing specifically with Conair. In general, if I were to kind of summarize what I'm hearing from some of the more traditional brands that we're working with, is they have been laggards in the e-commerce adoption relative to the brands like a Feastables that really started digitally native first. And so a lot of what they are focused on is setting up more of the infrastructure to be more digitally native and to grow their direct to consumer presence, because they have the retailer relationships. That's been their bread and butter kind of go to market for a long time. So now they're looking for ways that they could help build their direct to consumer channel and connect those retail and direct to consumer presence. So that's kind of the direction in general we're seeing your more traditional established brands. That's like the trend that we're seeing there. If you shift over to your digitally native brands, and so, some of those that we're working with, we'll talk about Feastables, but the Jolies of the world, the Canopys of the world, those are our customers that they know digital like very, very well. They've grown up in this kind of like D2C first ecosystem. And they're growing really quickly in that environment, but also understand that they're going to need to continue to grow outside of D2C, because there is a, inflection point where, you could only profitably acquire customers in D2C to a certain extent. And so other channels start to become a priority for these brands, whether that's Amazon or retail. And frankly, these are brands that will go from 90% of their revenue is from D2C that like overnight with a couple of big retail partnerships can shift to 50-50. And so these brands know that value of a direct relationship with their customer. I mean, using Canopy and Jolie as examples, like these are product and subscription businesses. So like they really know that like LTV story of having that recurring revenue through the subscription. That um when they sell through retail, it's just a trickier game of then owning that customer and being able to, upsell or cross sell them to that filter replacement. And that's where they want to bring that customer into their direct ecosystem. So, what
Yes.
Brij does is help make that seamless for the brand. So, register your Joey shower head and then purchase a filter subscription, or register, activate the warranty on your Canopy humidifier, watch a video to change the filters, and then subscribe to the filter subscription. So that is all something that we would support. Did you have a question there?
No, I was gonna say it's you're illustrating it quite well, and it's just so it's like you kind of help empower those, journeys. Meaning,
Yes.
so once again, you just said so many great things there. So I just want to help for the audience at home, right? Because if you're watching this and say you work at a traditionally non-digitally native brand, or if you work at a digitally native brand, there's two sides, and you basically help bridge the gap of where you want to go. Hey, you want to build a bridge over here? We help you figure out how to get there, vice versa. And you know how like in retail traditionally it was POP displays?
Correct. Yep.
And like that would
It
have
could be
been
POP, or it could be kind of growing their D2C channel
yeah,
through.
but what I mean is the old school is like, oh, we're releasing a new POP display at Walmart, catch it. That's how you educate your consumers. But now that you have a way to draw that consumer into a digital space, these retail partnerships for traditional brands where they already have a good relationship actually also help bring people to the store, right? It also helps create reasons for the stores to exist. So it helps reinforce those symbiotic long-term relationships. And then vice versa with the newer, more digitally native brands, you're helping them who may be more naive about retail. You're helping them forge that path into retail where they can sustain, like you said, new customer acquisition and like find the right way to enter into retail. And I think that is really powerful. So for anyone watching at home, it's just try to put on that hat in a way, like like put on the hat of, hey, this is where I want to go. Here's how I can get there, and not just you don't. It's not so scattershot. It's very focused on the goal. So like you said with Jolie was a great example. Like you're helping them orchestrate their product registration program, but not just for the sake of registering your product, but with the intent of capturing and knowing who that offline customer is and bringing them all online.
Exactly
So
right.
it's really powerful stuff because yeah, that's where it needs to go. Because as consumers as well, where you shop is really dependent on your lifestyle and on your habits. And you don't want to be associating a brand with just, oh, that's the brand I only get here. You want, like, when you see a brand somewhere else, it gives you that signal as well. Like as an activation, it says, oh, that brand that I love and I discovered is now going mainstream. Aren't I cool for being the first one to adopt it? Vice versa. Oh, that brand that I've been using since a kid. Oh, they're getting with the times. Now they're going digital. And so I think that's kind of a powerful thing. So would you say that what you do is both consulting and technology in a way?
It's a really good
Strategy, I guess.
it's
Yeah.
a really good question. So, we're a software company first and foremost, though we also understand that a consultative sales process is really important because this is a new category, and we, throughout our sales process and our customer success process, like we know that we're the experts on, what the best ways to do this are across our customers. So there's absolutely an element of strategy that we are supporting our customers with. So it's software, and so we're constantly looking to how we can bring that strategy into more scalable tools, whether that be kind of a knowledge center or content that we are like sharing with our customers. But there's, certainly a strategy portion where our customers are looking to us as the experts around, how they should be executing on omnichannel. And then, it becomes it's not just, okay, how should we execute omnichannel and, bridge our customers and our offline and online. It's like within our category, like what's the best way? And, not just within our category, within our, specific, brand and our strategy, like, the way that I would give advice to an influencer backed brand, because we now, because of Feastables, we're working with, several different influencer and, YouTube backed brands. The advice that I would give to those brands is very different than the advice that I would give to, a brand that doesn't have that same, more of an emerging CPG brand that doesn't have that same.
That's a good way to put it.
So there's like obviously different types of advice and categories that we would fit the brands that we work with into.
So in a way, you're helping, like, stratification is the first step where you stratify brands into, hey, this is your situation. We've heard this before. Once again, it's the vast experience you bring to the table through doing this repeatedly and kind of owning this space. And then you're helping them, guide them on their omni-channel journey, whichever step or phase they're in. So there's, say, hey, you're in this category. You most likely fit this profile. Now here's your specific pain points that you've obviously told us. And then your technology helps them get there faster, because if it was just a strategy thing, then you wouldn't have to. So you have the question, the problem, and the answer all in one, which I think is really cool, because it's also exciting for brands to, sometimes when people present you with a problem, they don't always present you with a solution. So it could be inherently frustrating, because now you're like, hey, great. I found out that I'm not good at this, and, I need to go to school for a couple years and get better at it or whatever. But you're also like, wait, here's a solution right off the bat, and they can execute it, put it into their latest campaign. And so I think that is inherently exciting. And that's why, I just want, like, I always like to use the word momentum, but it puts a lot of momentum behind what you're doing, because you get to see the results in action. Like, somebody comes to you, and then within X months, that idea that was incepted through using the technology is now in reality is a proof of concept. Hey, this worked, this didn't work. Let's refine the strategy and deploy it again over here. And I just think that can be very rewarding. Once again, putting on my brand hat, is when you're a brand, you don't have so many chances. And this kind of reminded me of what I wanted to say before, is like legacy brands move slower. So when they make a decision, that decision has to work because it costs them so much, versus newer brands maybe can adapt faster, but because they don't have as much knowledge about their user or their product or whatever, they might not make the right decisions, which costs them a different type of runway. So I think it's inherently valuable, and yeah, that's just really impressive. And then other question is using your investor background, because that's a unique skill set that you bring to the table. I don't know what kind of investing, so maybe you want to shed some light on that, but would you say, because as an investor, you have to do a lot of analysis, and also, the pain points of the people behind the brands, like, hey, this is the challenge the C-suite is looking at. This is the challenge the founder is looking at, who's trying to get their next round. And I think that also probably dovetails into why this is a different kind of product. It's not tech for the sake of tech. It's tech with a purpose to accomplish a goal. I mean, obviously a lot of tech has that, but it's more like, empowering the people that are trying to grow the brand, which I think also goes back to the, investment piece of it. So I was curious, where was your investment background, and how does that influence your thought process in executing this company and these strategies?
So I was a private equity investor, and I spent a lot of time actually looking, and I covered retail for
Okay.
Pimco. And so Pimco had both private and public exposure to retail across a couple of different categories, but their notable exposure was to malls. And so what I spent a lot of time thinking about is like, what will the future of physical retail look like? And like, what innovation are like physical retailers going to be employing in the future. So that was my investor background. I
Interesting.
think which like I thought a lot about what is omnichannel, like how is that going to be defined, and what is like experiential retail? How does that interaction between a customer going in store, online, and kind of back and forth? And what we see and know is that like a consumer does research online, they'll go in store, sometimes they'll purchase in store, sometimes they'll purchase online, but that's like very much this fluid experience. And the more you can like tie those things together, the better the shopping experience for the consumer, and the more data the brand has, and the more money the brand can make from creating that seamless experience. So that was what I was like actively thinking about investing in, from the private equity perspective. So as I think about what I learned from that and how I've taken that to being a founder now, is like, one, as an investor, you're looking across opportunities and deciding which ones you think are most interesting. And so I think that like when I was transitioning to being a founder and looking at different problems that I was excited about working on, I think that just like kind of that evaluation process was like a skill set that I took from the investor side. The other piece is, you have to be kind of people say you wear a lot of hats as a founder.
So true.
And that is so true. The amount of like shape shifting you are doing. And so I think that there's also an element as an investor of like just you're coming up a lot of different learning curves very quickly, because you're looking across so many different categories, and diving in and learning how to become an expert in those respective categories. So that like learning how to learn quickly is something that I think I've taken in and applied into becoming a founder here, because I am like I need to learn how to like learn quickly all these different topics. So when I'm hiring someone in marketing, how do I learn who a good marketer for a B2B SaaS company is? Like, what skill sets do they need to have versus sales? Those are very different roles and skill set
Yes.
and terminologies and comp structures. And I need to learn how to like what that looks like to even evaluate the talent. So that I think is one of the skill sets, like frankly, that I enjoy the most. But it truly hurts your brain at the end of the day. Like the amount of times that you're like shape shifting what you're focused on. I feel like I'm using my brain so much, because it's also just like, okay, we have this like enterprise contract. How are we going to price this deal? Like, what's the right structure that maximizes our pricing, fits the value of the customer, but then also grows with the customer? So these like all of these like problems that we're trying to solve on a daily basis. So I would say that's like
That's really interesting.
the piece. And then one other point that I will make that you alluded to, which is like why we're working on what we're working. And so something that I've actually written about in my content, and I think is really important, is focusing on the problem that you're solving. So there has been something that I feel strongly about since the like second I started working on Brij, is that we are solving a big problem. When a brand sells through retail, it is literally a black box in retail, Amazon, any marketplace. This is a massive problem that brands are actively looking for solutions for. Brij is a solution to that problem. Do we have like the perfect solution that solves every element of that problem? No. Do we have more of a solution than we did when we started? Yes. Are we continuing to build on that solution? Yes. Are there more opportunities for us to like solve more of that problem? Absolutely. And so where I feel very grounded in what we are doing as Brij is that we are focused on the right problem because it is such a big one that brands are actively looking for a solution for. We are going to continue to build on the solution, and there's, so much more opportunity and white space there. So, but the kind of a takeaway there is like being focused on a big problem, because that is like where there is a biggest opportunity as opposed to like, being obsessed with the solution that you come up with. I think, a lot of times people will incorrectly assume when you start a company that it's about the solution or the idea, but it's really more about kind of the problem that you're focused on solving.
So anyone who's founding a SaaS startup or founding a business, Kait just gave you $1 million worth of game, just saved you years of your life, possibly stopped you from failing. Like even me in my own business, you're just like, wow, like maybe that's a better way to identify what makes me so passionate about what I do, because you just hit the nail on the head. Because sometimes when you come up with a piece of software, you're so focused on what that software does instead of who it does it for or what problem it solves. And that puts you in a box. Like it corrals you, not to be graphic, but it corrals like like when they're corralling an animal or, in down one path, it really isolates you. So I think that's the vibe I'm getting as we talk about your product today. And once again, I've been seeing you in the ecosystem and just been always really like there's more of an aura around Brij, right? And I would say that's because it's so focused on the problem that the actual technology melts into the background. But I think technology is what solves problems. It's not the problem. It's not
Correct.
the problem set. And so it's just kind of clicking. So if it's clicking for me, I hope it's clicking for all you out there watching, because that is the essence of it, and why like what you're doing is so universal, ubiquitous. Like it's something that is like that's why I think you have some lightning in a bottle here with what you're doing, because this literally appeals to every brand on the planet who wants to have their product stand out, be known, grow. Hey, you've had success yesterday, what about tomorrow? Like there's an answer for all of those types of problems, and it's very universal. And so I love the way you encapsulated that. And I'm not just trying to fawn all over it. It's just really, it's just very like spot on. And I think when we compare it to other tech, it's not like, other tech is very focused on one thing, right? Like, hey, we started here. Hey, like we started as a reviews platform and now we have to add these 6 more categories so we can solve more problems. But it's like, it's like coming at it from one step behind, if you think about it, versus your technology could be ever evolving because it's answers to the problem that's a universal problem. And so I think that will keep, Brij, going forever. And I think that also just the notion of a bridge, if we come back to the concept of a bridge, like there's bridging the gap, there's physical bridges, there's just so many, like it's just a great analogy. So anyway, let me get off the Brij praise train for a moment. Because you're encountering, because this is like where it's like, hey, I think we need to have you back on with a panel or with a brand and really like grill a brand together. But I would say, since you're on the forefront and you're talking to new people every day, and also what you said about the enterprise pricing challenge was really interesting, because if you shortchange your own company, and I think that was a vulnerable founder moment we saw there, is like if you shortchange your own company, it means you can't grow your solution with the scope of their problem. And sometimes you don't see what that is from the outset because you're building that relationship, and it's much harder to redefine that later. So I think that is also a really noble challenge, because it's not just, hey, how do I do right by my team or my shareholders or whatever? It's also, how do we create a relationship that doesn't hit a certain ceiling or hit a certain point in the cage? And that's what I find as an agency founder. Sometimes it's, it's hard to also create some relationship that doesn't either eventually grow stale, or if you run into a different type of roadblock, how do you navigate that? So I think that's really interesting. So back to what I was saying is as someone who's encountering brands and retailers every day, and I don't want to just be like, oh, what are the specific industry trends? It's like, what is a problem that's literally new, like a April 2024 problem. I know we're 5 days in. By the way, for all those watching, we had an earthquake today. Kait and I are in the New York, New Jersey metro region, and we just had an earthquake. Okay, so give us a break. It's been a wild day. We know what it's like to be in California now. Literally rumbling for 30 seconds, building shaking. So I just had to call that out so we can memorialize this moment. So that's an April 2024 problem, is earthquakes in the East Coast. But the question back to what I was saying is, what's a brand new challenge? Not just like, okay, tech stack consolidation and some of these more global industry trends, but what is something that you're like, wow, I didn't, that would be really like groundbreaking, earth shattering of a new problem. And I'm not trying to like put you on the spot, but maybe there's something that you're like, hey, I'm seeing this really recently and it's happening.
Yeah. So it's funny because I was just talking. Well, I think it would be ridiculous of me not to mention AI and how brands are looking to incorporate,
of course,
AI into their tech stack. But I don't, I know it's like a highly discussed topic, so I'm going to go a little bit deeper than that. But I do want to say, like, Brij is an AI powered platform, and we are utilizing AI across multiple different touch points, whether it's receipt validation and gathering insights from data. So brands are actively looking for how they can incorporate AI into their workflows, into their products, into
no, I think that's
their
that's very relevant
software. So I think that that's like a topic that should just is highly discussed but needs to be addressed. But like on the this week question, and it's super funny that you like ask it that way, because I was talking with my team about how like we've had 3 calls that the number one focus was how they could incentivize more reviews, and specifically from their offline or retail or marketplace partners. And so as we think about, an Amazon, these, or even, Walmart.com, Target.com, these platforms are incentivizing, you perform better as a brand in these platforms when you have more reviews, more good reviews. So facts. And so it's no secret that brands want reviews and want to have good reviews on these platforms. But what has been surprising is just like the frequency in the last week that we've like heard this as like, this is our primary use case. We are looking to drive from our retail, from our marketplace channels, more reviews. How can you support that? So I don't know what is driving that right this second. I'm actually trying to figure that out. I'm curious if you know, because I would say like a similar trend that we've seen over the last 6 to 9 months has been drive retail velocity. And that I actually like know where that is coming from, because brand like CACs are high, brands are getting into retail, then they need to like support that retail. Retail sells.
Yeah, exactly. If it doesn't sell, they're not going to reorder it.
Right. Correct. I guess maybe what's driving the review is that brands are again focused more on these like e-commerce marketplaces, focused on and like that's where reviews will support them. But I'm curious if you have a perspective there.
Yeah, no, I'm just exploding with inspiration, because this literally goes back to stuff that I've been focusing on, which is multi-channel expansion and how to do that and what drives that. And so I would just say you touched upon something interesting, because when you get something in the mail from a marketplace, there might be like a little postcard in the box telling you, like, please review us.
Yep.
And so it's like, how can we advance that cause? Because it's not always effective, or you just, I'll do it later, and then you lose the card, right? And that's that. But that review is like a currency that's worth its weight in gold, because one stellar review that then gets promoted could be the game changer on a platform. And I don't think brands, once again, brands versus retailers, like, do you see that enough? And so I would just say maybe it's don't want to say desperation, but maybe it's knowing that, hey, if we just had more social proof, more people would believe. And so maybe that's why it's coming up. I don't know why at this exact moment. That's a really interesting conundrum. Um, maybe we need to figure out how to deep dive on that. But like, and if you heard, and because I know we're almost out of time, so I want to make sure to cover a couple more things, and I'm being cognizant that you have very important things to do on this Friday afternoon, is that like there must be a reason. And I think it's because the consumers are so vocal now too, meaning, hey, every person might be a micro influencer in their own right. And it's also like, like how there was like word of mouth and this and that, but it's even more than that, because I guess I have an idea. I just thought of something. In this economy where people are watching how they spend their dollars more carefully, and we live in a very uncertain economic climate, hopefully that's too much for one day. But yeah, the point is that we live in an uncertain climate. So maybe because as people are being more choosy about their purchases, the sensitivity to that goes up, because you might feel like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that could be it maybe.
And I agree with you around the trend around micro influencers, because the influencer kind of sphere that existed before,
Oh, it's
it's like
changing.
it's
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think people think it's inauthentic now, and so now you have a more individuals that are being influencing their friends in their own right, and so like, what are ways to do that? One are reviews, where there's that social proof. The other is UGC. So
Yes.
another, when you're talking about like what are these like use cases that are evolving, we started hearing from brands that they want to incentivize and encourage more UGC again from their retail customers. So that's kind of been another recent use case of Brij, is that brands are incentivizing UGC uploads, so video and photo uploads from their customers that are shopping them through retail. So that's kind of been like a, related new use case that we've seen emerging recently.
Awesome. I mean, like, we could deep dive on that more and more and more. And I think that's so fascinating. That's why people should contact Brij, so you can figure that problem out together. And then, if you need some facelift to your website, contact us. And so I was gonna say that while I still have you here, the two things. I'm trying to think where I was going with this. I wanted to make sure I don't step over this question before I get to this next question. Is what is some advice you would give to someone who might be beginning their founder journey right now, or starting their brand journey? Just someone who because you once again, you're an inspiration to a lot of people. You're out there, you're putting yourself out there, so a lot of people can learn from what you're doing. What is something you've encountered or that you would like to advise people who are earlier in their career to look at, both from a brand side or a SaaS or founder side on that level?
Yeah. So I'm gonna like two pieces of advice that are related. One is kind of like love either the problem that you're solving or the industry that you're solving it in, because being a founder is really hard. And I think the number one like quality that is going to get you through the hard points is grit. And so,
Perseverance. Yeah.
but if you love what you are doing and the people, like the problem that you're solving and kind of the people that you're interacting with, it's fun. And you're excited about kind of putting in that like grit and that hard work, because you get knocked down so many times in a day. It's ridiculous. If you're going to fundraise, like the amount of no's that I've gotten, hundreds, like so many people that are like, this is not a big enough idea. This is not going to work. No one's ever going to like this, it's part of being a founder is that you're like seeing around the corner. And so there's going to be so many people, investors that like don't see it yet. And so that's really hard. And then there's going to be customers and like prospects, like you're going to be in sales that like so many no's again.
Yeah.
And then the product, you're like, when you start like launching products, like you're going to be putting out fires on a daily basis. So to deal with those ups and downs, and, people talk about this like, roller coaster journey of being a founder, you have to just like kind of keep running through doors, and that's the grit. But if you love the industry that you're in, and I talk about this with my team, I just hired a new team member who wasn't in commerce before, and she was like, "Oh,
Okay.
this is so much fun. I'm loving this industry." And I'm like, "I totally agree. Like, I'm the person who like my holiday like list is all customer products because I'm totally like drinking the Kool-Aid of the industry, and that genuine yeah, you do it. Yeah, like that a genuine interest in the industry makes it fun for me. And like my genuine passion, like, and so it all feels so natural. And like when I'm going to these events and I'm putting myself out there, it is work. Like, don't get me wrong, but it's also fun. Like I'm building genuine relationships with people in this industry that I enjoy. Um, and I can't say the same thing about like previous roles that I had.
Yeah, it's so rigid.
Yeah.
This industry is fun. Everyone has their own identity, or there's so many nuanced microcosms and micro sectors of this industry that you're gonna find relatability wherever you go.
Yeah.
And also, people are really nice. So just back to the three core values. There's passion, right? Loving the space you're in because you're gonna be spending a lot of time with it. Perseverance, grit.
Yep.
What you said about getting knocked down is so true. And so you could equate it to like a really difficult workout. You may be really struggling with it while in the middle of it, and you're like, huh. But then the second it's over, you're like, oh, that was amazing. Let's do it again.
Yes.
So that's a good sign. And also just knowing that your challenges of yesterday are going to be smaller than your challenges of today. And that's a sign of growth. And then the third thing you said about getting out there and people is so important. So last question, because I know we have to wrap up. Here on the e-commerce hotline, I'm very passionate about spreading awareness about genetic heart disease, specifically hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, of which I have. It affects 1 in every 250 people. It's a disease that can be discovered through screening, very easy, or asking routine questions about family history. And 85% of people don't know they have it. And unfortunately, many people find out through the loss of a loved one, through a sudden cardiac arrest. So get screened. And so I would always ask my guests, what is a cause you're passionate about? Doesn't have to be health related. It could be societal. It could be, anything of that goal. But I just wanted to make sure to spread awareness and light to something that you care about, so we can tell the masses about that.
That is a great question, and thank you for sharing that. So, I think one of the things that I feel really passionately about is kind of empowering women to lean in and to like be like and have the career that they're excited about having, but then also have like be a mom and kind of do everything that they're excited and passionate about as like in their personal life as well. And I think that there's like a lot of barriers to doing so historically, and there's a lot of commentary about how difficult it is to do both, and don't get me wrong that it is difficult. And so I just like to also like kind of share content and discourse around how you can do both, because there's like really this like scary wall around my age, which is like early 30s, where women are like starting to have a family and care about their career, and they're like, oh my gosh, can I do both? Like,
Yeah, you
and
feel like one has to go one way or the other.
yeah, and I think that you can, and you need like a lot of things to support both. As in like you need to be working in an environment that is supportive of the fact that like you are going to need to have flexibility, but that's okay because like you can be home, at a certain time to put your child to bed, and then you can, log in after. So I think that um I like to give more tools to women to have these conversations with their workplace. And then also just like tell them that like there are these periods of time that are particularly scary, um, that you can get through, and you will get through. I don't know. I'm like 8.5 weeks pregnant right now with my second baby, and
Congratulations.
thank you. And I was really scared about having my first child and being a founder, and there was like so much that was scary about it. And I realized as I came out on the other side that like there's parts of it that are hard, but like that it's also like I have the two best jobs ever. Like I'm a mom and I, run my own business, and I can do both. You don't have to choose, but you have to, create a world where both can exist. And that requires support. And that requires, it requires like you to also demand what you need to make that work. So that's something that I feel really passionately about.
And so, yeah, and once again, being cognizant of time, I just want to say to all the women watching out there, you are not alone. There are other people going through this. There's other people who have paved the way, like Kait, who want to give back. So, Kait, you're very approachable. So, if someone wants to hit up Kait about this topic, hit up Kait on LinkedIn.
Yes, LinkedIn.
And also, if you have any materials to share, we'd be happy to share them, or articles, or places where people who are navigating this journey, or women who are navigating this journey can get help. And just a quick note for me, that's why I work for myself. That's one of the primary reasons, the flexibility of having kids, and you want to be there for them. So I think having workplaces that understand that is a very 2024 conversation, because people need to be aware. And obviously in different jobs versus others, you have that more privileges than others to do that. But I would say that's what you're saying back about demanding it and having those expectations and not settling for less, or not foregoing your urges to build a family in the sake of career. So I know we got to wrap up, folks. So I just want to say thank you so much, Kait, for being here. It was a really wonderful conversation, and thank you for the thought-provoking discussion. I hope to find another part 2, or find a way to converse on other topics. And, just want to say thank you for being here.
Mayor, it was wonderful chatting with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. And this is the e-commerce hotline. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you for watching.